getting.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce Mark Burrows of Chicago. Mark is a retired 40-year veteran Canadian Pacific Railroad locomotive engineer who is also an active member of SMART, TD, and who served as a delegate for his union's international convention. Since 2011, Mark has been working with Railroad Workers United, an organization formed to bring unity to the voices of the many different unions representing railroad workers in order to more effectively fight for improved safety for railroad workers and the public. In his retirement, Mark continues to work to raise public awareness about these issues. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us tonight, Mark.
Thanks for the invite. Well, I was going to try to, I was going to start with describing RWU, but that intro pretty much summed it up pretty effectively. Essentially, we're an organization of rank and file rail workers that, to put it nicely and diplomatically, we feel that our unions, for whatever reasons, that's a whole separate discussion. But the fact of the matter is that we just feel that they're not fighting as effectively as needs to happen, as can happen for our safety and dignity on and off the job. And as the tragedy of Lac Magentic became kind of the poster child for the concept that our safety, a safe work environment, impacts the public, and Lac Magentic is a poster child for what can happen when the perfect storm, when a combination of various factors, generally unsafe factors, come into play. And so we started just kind of trying to inspire and challenge our peers, our co-workers, to break out of this demoralization that common, the company's treating us bad, the union's not doing anything, and challenge and inspire our coworkers and peers with the history of labor, and to empower us to think for ourselves and to act for ourselves, and to start with what we're entitled to in terms of safety and dignity, as opposed to accepting what's just whatever the company is going to give us. And so this was the starting point for how we began, and essentially that the rank and file needs to find our way to unify our 13 different craft unions, and start with the starting point of what we're entitled to, and not what is handed down to us. The major safety issues that we take on, that we've been sounding the alarm on the danger of single employee crews, and as much as the fight against engineer only trains, they're working on no engineers. The industry is already testing autonomous trains, and so fighting for a two-person crew, to hold the line at the two-person crew, it was going to be difficult enough against the single employee crew, but they're going for zero crews. So that we've written a lot about why that's important, and the dangers of engineer only, and they've made it clear they are going after that. What form it takes, when the next battle comes, remains to be seen, but we know it's coming. We can state that as a fact. And fatigue, for years, overworked, and even before precision scheduled railroading, which is kind of the new business model. Fatigue and overwork, long hours, was already a problem, and then precision scheduled railroading, which is kind of an oxymoron, but it's basically the business model of just speed up, more production with less employees, and so the issues of fatigue have just been ramped up exponentially, and this leads to the long and heavy trains. Years ago, a 5,000, 7,000 foot train, that was a long train. That was that was considered, if you came to work and you had a 7,000 foot train, okay, got my work cut out for me. And nowadays, it is not uncommon for these trains to be over 2 miles long, 20,000 tons. And what enrages me about this is they went to great lengths to teach us about the physics in training us how to train handle and get a heavy train, a long heavy train from point A to point B. So they taught us the physics involved to make us more conscientious about our responsibility, and then to see them run these 2 mile plus long trains, 20,000 tons. They know how dangerous it is because they taught us many years ago. And these two, when you're sitting at a crossing for a half hour blocked by a 2 mile long train, the only reason for that is once upon a time, 3 crews might take that train. Now 1 crew is doing the work of what 3 crews used to be: less employees, less benefits. So it speed up, and while most of them get over the road, the fact is the margin for error, there's a very limited margin for error, whether it's operator error, whether and the final issue on safety is deferred maintenance of the track, deferred maintenance of the rolling stock. If the cars, the wheels need to roll freely. If they don't, they can heat up, and then they'll get so hot they'll just break and disintegrate, and that causes a derailment. With a smaller train, if something like that happens, the damage is going to be much less. You might be able to catch it sooner and minimize the damage compared to when something like that happens on a 2 mile plus long train. So then when things go bad, they go really bad. And so the margin for error, whether it's operator error, whether it's deferred maintenance on the rolling stock, deferred maintenance on the tracks don't get inspected as much, and so the potential for things to go wrong just gets magnified. And so when you have these 2 mile, 20,000 ton trains, the margin for error is nil. The meeting Rosemary referred to, several years ago in the wake of when the Burlington Northern tried to implement a single employee crew on a big chunk of their territory. Not only did the workers at the BN resist that, but their wives, their friends, their families, the communities rose up to fight the single employee crew. and we realized that in between the combination of that and Lock Magentic, the time was there for us to take our message to the public, not only because when we get into battles over single employee crew, we won't be able to win these battles by ourselves. We will need the public support, but it's also, we see it as our moral and ethical responsibility that people should know what's going on and what communities are up against. When Lock Magentic happened, we weren't surprised. It was a punch in the gut, because it's the kind of thing that we always knew could happen. We hoped, we fought in fighting for safety, and fighting against fatigue, and fighting against long and heavy trains, and fighting against unsafe work operations. This is the kind of disaster we were hoping to prevent. And it was a real punch in the gut that, in spite of our efforts, something like this happened. And but because of that, the public, for many reasons, environmental concerns, not wanting trains blowing up in your backyard, there was a real shift, and we have sought to become involved in that discussion. Just for we just feel that obligation and responsibility, and so I think what I'll do is I'll leave it at that. I'm kind of winging it. I've been in the middle of moving and working on getting the highball out. And so I'm probably not as prepared as I'd like to be. So I am winging it. And so I think I'll leave it there. And then if there's questions, perhaps more can get fleshed out in any question and answer, but I'll leave it there for time's sake and efficiency.
Well, one thing I'd like you to maybe talk about a little bit is kind of our pre-meeting conversation with the Patriot Act. So engineers kind of got the runaround from the industry. The engineers wanted to know what they were carrying. And the industry said that they did not have a right to that information. Well, I'll let you tell. What were you told? And then I'll explain what I was told by an attorney at our State Emergency Planning Commission.
This came up. This came up a few weeks ago. Just kind of sharing this, I offered my observations, and I remember going back to the 80s when nuclear power and after 3 Mile Island and awareness about, in the same way that Lock Magentic heightened people's concerns about oil trains and oil going through their communities. I think it's fair to say that back after 3 Mile Island in '79, that people became much more aware, concerned, conscious of nuclear stuff, ourselves, rail workers included, and right from the get-go, if we wanted to know what was, hey, how much kind of nuclear stuff, we would get radioactive play cards. We would know when you come to work, you get a train list, and okay, you've got X amount of ammonia, you've got Bakken oil. It's probably not labeled Bakken oil, but it's oil, and it's rated at the certain flammability with the whatever placard it has. And so we know that we're carrying dangerous stuff. But things like it was very easy to just, if people wanted to know about what kind of nuclear stuff we were carrying, it was just national security. We can't talk about it, whether it was, so we'd have a radioactive car in our train, and It could be left over from a hospital or from or nuclear waste. We wouldn't really know. And so essentially they've been able to when people inquire, whether it's communities or unions, they've been able to throw, now, back in the 80s, it was national security. And then after 9/11, the Patriot Act was the one size fits all for, we can't divulge that information, for just another way of using the national security thing. And I think it's fair to say that workers, the unions, ended up buying into that, irregardless of the actual factual legal merits of that, which Jerry has done some tremendous research, and apparently they're hiding behind the Patriot Act doesn't have the legitimacy that they've been trying to sell us, and so that's going to be some interesting challenges and confrontations in terms of freedom of information, transparency coming down the road. Does that kind of address?
Yeah, so I talked to an attorney at the Illinois, the State Emergency Planning Commission. And well, I read the Patriot Act. And as I was reading the Patriot Act, there was nothing in it about that I would interpret as allowing the industry to not provide information that by law, SARA Title III, that the public has a right to. And so I asked him about that. From what I could tell, all the Patriot Act refers to is if terrorist activities toward a rail company, if a terrorist was involved in any kind of an act against a rail industry or railroad or cars, or then that's what this legislation would apply to. So the attorney that I spoke to said no. He said that is his interpretation also, and that the rail industry did try to go state to state to try to get states to sign off that, to withhold information for security reasons. Some states did, he said. He didn't specify which ones, but he said Illinois was not one of them. So the public does have a right to the information. So I said, well, can I have it? I would like that information. He doesn't have that information. So now the next, it's just a wild goose chase. No matter if you talk to the local LEPC, they told me to talk to the state told me to talk to the local. He also suggested IDOT, PHMSA, OIRA, FCC, ICC. So I plan on sending FOIAs to everybody, and we'll see who's got what information. But what he also said is that you can be assured that at some point there's a list of over 300 hazardous materials, and all of them, he said, are going through Lake County and Northern Cook County. They're all coming. So, and they're all on trains. So.
I have a question. Are you done? Can I ask? Okay. Mark, in terms of knowing, from your perspective, in terms of knowing what it is that you're carrying on those trains, how does that impact your job? I mean, if you know that you're transporting highly nuclear waste or highly flammable liquid, do you go at a slower pace, especially through those communities, or what?
I was kind of I was kind of talking to Jerry about this informally before the call, and in general, 99.9% of engineers that I know, I think it's fair to say that you know, when we come to work, we just want to we want to get our train from point A to point B efficiently, safely, without incident. And so if I have a bunch of empty grain hoppers, or if I have 100 cars of flammable oil, there's going to be I'm probably going to be a bit more conscientious. I can honestly say I'm going to be more conscientious if I know that I've got flammable oils or ammonia or chlorine. I am going to be more conscientious as opposed to if I had 100 empty grain hoppers. But in general, we have speed limits. We are expected to, main lines are rated 40 miles an hour, 50, 60. If you have the horsepower and if you're on a 60 mile an hour track, you are expected to go, that's what's called track speed. So you are expected to go close to track speed. You can't just do 25 miles an hour because you're not comfortable. That you'll get it up for investigation for delay of train, and you keep doing that, you'll be fired. And so your job requirement is to balance efficiency with safety. And so now there are some commodities that will have a 40 mile an hour speed limit in some areas, but the basic answer to the question is, when you know you have dangerous stuff, you're going to be that much more conscientious, and you're going to make every effort you can to balance the efficiency that the job requires to keep your job, and be as safety conscientious as possible. That's about, I hope that answers your question.
Well, I would also add, it takes away your ability to say, you know what, this is a little more risky than what I signed up for, and I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. or to walk away from the job.
Yeah, and I was also going to say, do you think that, as you mentioned, balancing efficiency and safety, but do you think that when it comes to flammable, highly toxic material, that's pretty much the problem? Because when you're transporting that type of material at high speeds, that's a missile. And the risk is just astronomical at going at that speed. So do you think that the railway industry needs to decrease, speeds when you're transporting that type of material?
Here's this is my personal opinion. I believe that the unions, I believe that the workers should have the decisive say, because we know, okay, it's my opinion that if I'm carrying anything hazardous like chlorine or bleach, or chlorine or ammonia or flammable oil, those trains should be extremely limited in size. I would say, my personal opinion is not more than 50 cars. once upon a time we had cabooses, and one of the job of the people, of the workers in the caboose, was to inspect the train as it goes around curves. So at night, if you saw sparks, stop the train and see what the problem is. You know, maybe a sticky wheel. By day, it would be a little bit of a smoke. It would be a little smoke. And so when you have small trains with a caboose, with people being able to inspect and visually inspect the train going around curves and stuff to make sure that everything is running smoothly. So yes, I personally believe that hazardous commodities, there should be special guidelines, small trains, slow speeds, cabooses, so that they can be visually inspected. But that would take the unions having a decisive say on safety, and we're a long way from that. And I mean, to whatever extent community pressure can help, right now, I mean, the unions as they're currently constituted, and many workers don't even feel that entitlement, and so that's part of the problem. But my personal opinion is dangerous commodities, absolutely special limits in speed and train length should be mandated to maximize the chances for safety, to safely getting from point A to point B, and to minimize the chance. But that would also entail more consistent track inspections of the infrastructure, as well as the rolling stock. So it all goes hand in hand with safety. And at this point in time, we just don't have any say in it, and the railroads pretty much just do what they want, and that's kind of what we're up against.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Can I jump in on Nicole's point there too? You know, this fire in Morris where the lithium batteries are aflame, that fire chief, who barely could keep his composure in front of the cameras, relating how they had no idea that was stored there, and that their first instincts to put water or to put foam, then they found out you're not supposed to do that. How idiotic does an engineer feel when the fireman comes to him and says, oh, that car that just fell over, what's in there so we can prepare? And the engineer has to say, oh, I don't know, nobody told me. And it's an unfathomable situation.
Yeah, I agree.
No, the engineer has a manifest with the contents, right, Mark?
Yeah, the conductor, the conductor is generally in charge of the paperwork, whereas the engineer's got his hands full just operating the beast. But yeah, so we have a manifest. So for instance, if there were a situation, we would get that paperwork to the first responders as quickly as possible. The problem is A, we got to hope that manifest is accurate. That if it says the 30th car is ammonia, that it actually is the 30th car, and that's why we have roll-by inspections when we leave the yard to make sure that the train list is accurate. But as with speed up, that just gets rushed along, and it is not uncommon for things to be out of order, and then you handwrite, instead of a new train list, they handwrite it and all that stuff. And so again, if you've got 50 to 75 cars and you need to identify what's in the contents of the 30th or 40th car, it's going to be a quicker process to try to figure that out, as opposed to 200 cars but yeah, in general, we do have a manifest. We do have a manifest that has a lot of that information, hoping that it's accurate. But again, that can take time and getting it to the first responders, and that's assuming that the train crew. Sometimes you have an incident and the train crew is incapacitated. So then you do run into a situation where the first responders are basically fending for themselves. They can try to get the information, from the railroad themselves, but you can imagine that's a time-consuming operation as well.
Question. I thought that, so you talked about that there is a manifest in terms of, informing people in about what's in those cars. But I thought you said earlier that, industry kind of blocks that from the railway workers in terms of their right to know by hiding behind the Patriot Act. So which is it?
So I'm going to say the communities are going to get blocked much more. When I come to work to take a train, I'm going to know that I have ammonia. I'm going to know that I have chlorine, and they're all given various designations of their flammability, of their inhalation hazard, and so we as the crew are going to know that. The only thing that will be in the dark on is anything military, and if anything radioactive or anything that the Defense Department is shipping, that will be in the dark on but general industrial things we will know about. Now, what happened? This came out after the fact that the Bakken oil that blew up in Lac Mégantic, that was not listed, that was not rated for the flammability that it actually was. They were, it's supposed to be, and they, at the production facilities, they were, doing various stunts, manipulating the weights, this and that, and I think they added a chemical to make it more fluid. I forget exactly, but the bottom line is it turned out to be, because of what was done in the processing, it turned out to be much more flammable than it was really rated for. And so the workers themselves wouldn't have even known how flammable it was going to be. But if we have ammonia or chlorine, we know what the hazard is, and so we know what we have. For the most part, it's the communities that they try to bamboozle. If they let the community know that this is happening, then that information could come into the hands of bad people, and so that's. But we as workers have a pretty good idea when we have dangerous industrial chemicals.
Do you think that when that argument you made that, knowledge of what's contained can fall into the hands of bad actors, do you think that there is some validity to that?
here's my personal opinion. I worked my last 25 years in the Bensonville yard, which is just across the street south of Irving Park from O'Hare, and the access. I mean, we all thought of, you know, especially in the immediate aftermath. If bad actors wanted to do bad things, rail yards are just so pathetically vulnerable to something like that. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's my answer. On the one hand, they hide behind the Patriot Act to deny communities information that they need, and then on the other hand, in a situation where there really could be a potential hazard for that particular scenario, they're completely indifferent, and so it's really kind of shameless hypocrisy on that particular point.
Well, I would also add that I would say that the rail would be no more at issue than any kind of a facility where these substances are stored. And under SARA Title III, the public has a right to know that information. So why would it be any different with the hazardous materials that are transported through our neighborhoods? And in fact, SARA Title III protects that as well. It's just that the industry was hiding behind the Patriot Act. And I remember in 2014, when I was starting to research this, I remember reading about that was in the newspapers, that the people, the community residents, we don't have access to it because of national security. That was a lie. And I do remember reading in the papers later that was a lie. And it was confirmed, in Illinois that does not apply.
I mean, I completely agree. Very good point. When I started working on the railroad, at Proviso, the Chicago Northwestern Proviso yard, by one entrance, we had a security gate that we had to go through to go in by a security guard. At the Sioux Line, at the Milwaukee Road Sioux Line yard in Bensonville, people would just walk through to take a shortcut because they'd have to go much further to a public crossing in Franklin Park. If they were on foot or with a bicycle, they would just come right at the Manheim Road exit and just waltz on right through the yard. Once in a while, one of the security police might catch them first, but it was just really free access. It's not supposed to be, but for all intents and purposes, it was, and that's why I say it's kind of hypocritical to hide behind all this stuff to deny this information while the rail yard itself is just wide open with access for anybody and everybody.
What, if you had to give some recommendations for a type of security structure on those rail yards, what would you tell, I guess, whoever's in charge of doing that? What needs to happen? What types of security needs to be in place?
And again, this is just my personal opinion. You would need to have restricted entry If you really wanted to guarantee ironclad safety from that potential, scenario of bad people wanting to do bad things, which, I don't want to overstate that, but it's an ugly world that we live in. And so that unfortunately, we have to concede that possibility can't be ruled out without dwelling on it and giving it too much. But in answer to the question, hypothetically, you would have to have a secure perimeter that only designated people are. You'd have to have fences, a secured perimeter, entrance points. But even, for instance, the Sioux Line Yard has a big walkover bridge with going over Mannheim, and the Proviso Yard in Melrose Park, this Mannheim goes over that as well. And you'd have to virtually put up it's just chain link fence. You'd have to really make that secure. So I mean, it could be done. It would require quite a bit of capital investment and so it could be done. It would just take a lot of effort and investment.
Thanks.
So I think we've gone for about an hour. We should probably, unless there's any last lingering questions. Gloria?
Here you go.
Mark, what's your opinion about slack action between a 75 car train and a 150 car train?
Well, there's going to be double the slack action.
Right. Do they understand how much slack there is with those rubber drawbars and the different kind of cars? I mean, some cars, the drawbar can move 2 feet before the car starts to move, and others are a lot less. But we had impact recorders in trains, and we didn't feel anything on the engine or caboose, but the impact recorder record 27-mile-an-hour impacts while we're en route up and down the hill or curves. It's just that it's slack action. As we had some where a slack action run in and pop cause a car to jump off the tracks. That's a big reason why I think why those empty bulkhead flats without anything in the middle, they had a 40-mile-an-hour restriction on them because they get to wobbling so bad.
Yeah.
I'll shut up now, that's all.
No, and that's what I said at the beginning. They taught us about the physics, of what we were dealing with, and then they, as they've grown to 150, 200 car trains, they know better than anybody the physics that they're playing around with because they taught us, and so that's part of what enrages me, and I would just add that when I first trained, my first training trip as an engineer, this old grizzly, I was a scrawny 18-year-old kid with hair down my back, and this grizzly old 50-year-old engineer, said, "I'm going to teach you how to run this train so that you won't, so the conductor can pour his cup of coffee and you won't even spill it." And that was what we aspired to. At the very least, we didn't want to get cursed out by the conductor for giving him a bad ride because of not handling the slack. And now what you're referring to, without worrying about making the conductor angry for giving him a bad ride, they just give you these thresholds of don't go over X amount of force, slack running in, don't go over X amount of force slack running out, I think the art of really handling a train gently got lost when they eliminated the caboose and you didn't have him barking at you. You know, and I think that's another casualty that doesn't get that doesn't get factored in with these ridiculously long trains now.
Jerry,
Well,
I'm sorry, I had one more question, and it's something that, you know, might not be appropriate for an answer now, but given that we're talking about the fact that a lot of our first responders in all our municipalities are kind of flying blind, like Rosemary mentioned about the battery storage facility, have you been in discussions where there have been, and this is for you as well, Mark, but have you been in any discussions where they've talked about what options might be possible for informing the municipalities, or at least, you know, first responder organizations in those municipalities about what's on these trains?
that is in place. That is in place through the CERC.
Okay.
I can tell you exactly what is reported if you give me 1 second to let me pull it up.
And what is CERC while you're doing?
Yeah, it's the State Emergency Planning Commission. So he said rail companies only report when they are carrying over 1 million gallons. Railroad is required to send notification to the CERC and to provide route information, but it's difficult to tell where the rail line actually is. They may get a map, the CERC may get a map of a county with a line going through it to indicate where the route is, which is far from an accurate report.
And only if they have 1 million gallons?
Only if they're carrying 1 million or more gallons. And the report to the state pertains to a 2-week period of time, and reports are not regular because they only have to report when they're 1 million gallons or over. So.
Okay. So it's not really an efficient notification for the most part anyway.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Not in my opinion.
Well, yeah.
Not as somebody who could get blown up or asphyxiated by this stuff.
Right. Exactly.
So Mark, I want to thank you so much. You are a rock star. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
I just want to close real quickly because I failed to mention that, but and it's a little separate from this discussion, but I just wanted to add that we in RWU, we're also citizens of the planet, and we understand that a green future is a life and death question, and we believe that efficient, safe railroading can be a positive contributing factor in a green future, and so we've kind of stepped up our advocacy on that. I just kind of wanted to throw that in there that we do, in addition to this happens to be our arena. And we do what we can within it, but we also see ourselves as citizens of the planet and part of a bigger movement for social and environmental justice in general. So I just wanted to close on that note.
Yeah, and we as environmentalists also need to be cognizant of this is a career. This is a lifetime career of an engineer. And when we talk about not transporting these materials, that impacts their livelihood. And some of this can be done safely. The problem is that the industry chooses not to do it because that would take away from their profits. They are consistently choosing profits over safety. So, you know, we don't, yes, we want to be moving to a green future, but we're not going to do that overnight. And in the meantime, what we need to be advocating for right now is safety and safe working conditions for our rail workers. So
and the whole profits against safety, I mean, that's a big issue throughout society, and this is, you know, the railroad industry is just a part of it, and I get, you know, that's a big question throughout it. That's part of the fight for social justice, and this is just our particular arena.
And we want to support you in that.
Well, thank you, and likewise. Thank you all very much for inviting me, and any time that I can contribute, I representing as RWU, let me know. Anytime I can contribute anything, I'm more than happy to. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mark.
And Mark,
good night, everyone.
Tell people how they can get your newsletter.
Oh,
thank you, Rosemary.
Railroadworkersunited.org. That's our website, and you can sign up. You can sign up, get our weekly alerts. You can get we put out an 8-page hard copy newsletter every 3 months, which I'm in the process of trying to get out, and but we also put it out online. It's accessible on the website, and a lot of great information is on our website in relation, a lot more in depth of the various issues. So I highly recommend check out the website, railroadworkersunited.org.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, good night, everyone.
Good night, Mark.
Night.
Here, I'm going to put the I'll put the link in the chat here. There you go. That should bring you to Railroad Workers United, where you can sign up for the newsletter. So we have 15 minutes for a loaded agenda again, but I don't mind doing that when we have some good speakers and a lot of good information. And I need to stop the